Now, I must really have understood everything wrong. To me, this just proves that in Brazil, racism is for sale. Yes, there are many interracial marriages in Brazil, but in most of them, five of every six, according to the book Racismo à Brasileira, Uma Nova Perspectiva Sociológica. The same book was released in English, Race in Another America, The Significance of Skin Color in Brazil by sociologist Edward Tellis. The Black spouse in a marriage has superior social economic status. So this is what the trade-off is. As a matter of fact, I'm gonna just keep reading because I'm gonna get to the what he's saying with this. The phenomenon has already been studied in other societies as racist as ours, and in English, it's called status exchange in interracial marriage. Basically, according to Edward Tellis, individuals of the race considered socially inferior, which in Brazil means Black people, but we are in a position of social, educational, or financial superiority, can exchange, quote unquote, exchange their alleged or perceived racial inferiority and social economic superiority for the alleged perceived racial superiority, but social economic inferiority of poor individuals of the race considered superior in Brazil, which would be white people. So, what is he saying here? What he's saying is that in a lot of interracial marriages, like he said, five of six, it's the Black partner who usually has the higher socioeconomic status. Is considered marrying up. So the stigma that you have, the quality that's considered negative, your Blackness, is traded for a partner, even if she's of a lower status. But if she has white skin, it's considered moving up. This is the case in this situation in a lot of cases. You'll find this, well, again, top Black soccer players, musicians, singers, actors, they'll have the higher socioeconomic status in an interracial marriage. So it's saying, again, it's saying marrying up, exchanging the stigma of your color to marry up to a whiter or white partner, right? The marital data revealed by Tellis suggests that due to structural racism in our society, Black spouses would have a perceived status so low in the marriage market that he would be obliged to pay a high price for advantageous marriages, meaning marry up with lighter partners. In a way, very economically real, his color would have a disadvantage so large it needs many other countervailing benefits, such as higher education, higher income, etc., in order to compete on an equal footing. Now, this point is it brings to the fore that it's just mythology to believe because people marry across racial lines that racism doesn't exist. I have a bunch of other stories on the blog that talk about people's personal memories of coming from mixed race families and how jokes and racism existed within those families. You get Black people, the darker skinned people in these mixed race marriages being the ones who are the butt of jokes. The darker skin side of the darker family would be called monkeys, or just people make really disparaging comments where if the whiter side of the family that has the Italian or the German side, they're looked upon as if they're the icing on the cake of the family. Like, these are the people we aspire to be. So you see this again and again among Black entertainers. This is actor Darlan Cunha. He got famous in the movie City of God, which is Cidade dos Deus in Brazil. And the miniseries that it spun was called Cidade dos Homens, which means City of Men. And this, I don't know who he's with now, but I'm almost sure it's probably another white girl. That's just how Black Brazilian men get down when they get money. I don't know who he's with now, but this was his girlfriend at the time I posted this article. A typical white Brazilian family of the lower middle class and incorporating all the racist assumptions of our culture, perhaps chase away with a bullet the Black waiter who dared approach their youngest daughter, or the Black maid wanting to marry the firstborn white man. It's probably here you say Branquinho or Whitey. On the other hand, a Black doctor, a professional liberal Black with a car in the garage and a plasma TV, maybe this wasn't so bad. Just maybe. Again, just your average Black guy? No. But if he has money, okay, well, maybe we can accept him that way. In my other video, I talked about white female soccer fans going to these stadiums, just lusting after the Black players on the field. but perhaps lusting after them because they have money. Because one of the women in that particular video said blatantly, like, well, if he's not rich, I'll just stick with the white guy I got at home. I mean, she literally said that. She's after the black men who have money, which is what the point of this article is. Financial security and social mobility may offset the perceived taboo of uniting with someone of the race considered inferior. Brazil is a racist country. When I say this, many readers feel attacked as if I had called all Brazilians racist. But one thing does not necessarily have to do with the other. Emphasis on necessarily. Social phenomenon described above, for example, is extremely racist, but none of the actors could properly be called a racist. Nobody is obligated to marry anyone. We cannot walk up to a white girl and wave a finger in her face, accusing her of being racist for having preferred the preto or black doctor over the pardo or brown carpenter who she dated before. We cannot walk up to the black doctor and wave a finger in his face, accusing him of being racist for having married a poor white woman instead of choosing, quote unquote, a woman of his own color. None of these people are necessarily a racist or is scum or wrong or deserves reprimands. Observing individual cases does not solve anything. People are free and marry who they want. Now, while I'm on this topic, I just want to point out that, as I said, that I've talked about this for a number of, there's a number of articles you can check out on the blog that talks about this issue. This one here from 2013 is called The Social Construction of Preference and Interracial Relationships. Black Brazilian women talking about Black Brazilian men and white women. You go through this article and you see much of the same. This is the famous rapper, activist, and actor MV Bill and his girlfriend at the time. Again, don't know who he's with now. But as Claudete Alves wrote in 2010, Vido a regra, which means this has become the rule. Rich or well-to-do Black men, almost 95% of the time is going to be married to a white woman or someone who is socially accepted as white. Another article we could look at. If you go to the blog and you just put in a search box and you just love white interracial, you come up with another bunch of articles. Look at this one here from 2021. Yes, interracial love does exist, but some Black people also use white people as a social passport to feel more accepted, according to a popular social influencer. What else we have here? Okay, check out this one here. Interracial unions and the plunder of the Black legacy. What this article is talking about is how well-to-do Black Brazilians, in their choice of white partners, they whiten their families, and there's this transfer of wealth that always goes back to the white hands that it started off with. This is the case of a popular singer, Gilberto Gil, who's one of the most important popular musicians in Brazilian music history, but people respect him for his music. He was once I believe he was once the Ministry of Culture in the Lula administration, but a lot of people have called him out because when you look at his family, it looks like, the painting come to life because you see this progressive whitening going on in Gilberto Gil's family. In this one, interracial relationships, eugenics, and militancy in Brazil, it talks about the plan. The plan says we're going to promote miscegenation among Black people until they whiten themselves out of the population. That couple as the cover photo there drew some controversy, a couple of years back. That's another topic I'll talk about maybe in the future. This article here talks about Black Brazilian men and women being accused of having white preferences. You have both sides pointing the finger at each other. Black Brazilian women saying to men, you all choose white women. Black Brazilian men shoot back like, well, a lot of you choose white men too. So what are you talking about? This article at the bottom, being in an interracial relationship is not synonymous with racism. It's just this is written by a popular social activist. I believe she's also married to a white man, and she just talked about, being in an interracial relationship does not mean racism doesn't exist in Brazil. I could go on, just numerous, maybe just a few titles here. Let's see, what else do we have here? Okay, like this is another good one. Racism in interracial relationships, taught to overvalue whiteness. This is a lot of Black people coming into this conclusion that, they've been deceived into believing that marrying white is the thing to do in Brazil. When I used to teach English in Sao Paulo, this is something that I would talk to my students about. Every Saturday I would have four classes with up to about 40, 50, 60 people, young kids to teenagers to adults. And a lot of teenagers would tell me, like, yeah, my family, they used to always tell us, don't bring anybody black home, we're trying to whiten the family. So this is another really intriguing article. The validation we want is usually white. Why black romantic relationships tend to be complex. Here's an article where people are talking about, even in an era where for the first time you have black people talking about, look, we need to have Afrocentric relationships. They realize it's not as easy it's not as easy as it seems, because they've all been raised under this mindset that says we're supposed to marry white. So these relationships, trying to form relationships with people of your same color when you're black, it tends to still be a little bit complex. It's not as easy as people make it out to be. So anyway, let's get back to the article. Again, there's a number of articles that I've discussed this issue here. This picture is of popular singer actor Sel Georgi, and I don't know who he's with now, but this was him and his girlfriend at the time. They were at the 2005 Trofea Raça Negra Awards, which you can translate as the Black Race Awards. It's an award ceremony that happens in Sao Paulo every year. It's somewhat similar to, I don't know, maybe a Soul Train Music Awards or Essence Music Awards, where they give awards to, Black musicians, Black activists, prominent people from the Black community. Every year they have this award ceremony. So Sel George is another one. Sel George is a dark-skinned Black man, and I know that I don't know who he's married to right now or if he's married, but you've always seen white women with Sel George also. Again, has this become the rule? This is generally what you see. However, when we look at the numbers in general, it is impossible not to see in this matrimonial phenomenon one of the most glaring symptoms of Brazilian racism. Only the fact that Brazil has many interracial marriages doesn't prove that the country is not racist, but on the contrary, the dynamics of marriages prove once again the overvaluation of whites and the stigmatization of blacks in our racist culture. According to Edward Tellis, the weakest link in the chain are Black women, victims of twofold prejudice because they are women and because they are Black. As there are more women than men, there already exists a greater statistical probability of the women remaining single more than men. Brancas, meaning white women, overcome the deficit of white men by marrying brown and Black men, and so on across the spectrum of colors, until obviously there is a lack of Black men for Black women who literally have no one, quote unquote, below them. So this is another thing that you see going on. White women have the option, if they can't get, I don't know what you want to call a high value white man in their own group, then they can always look down, or socioeconomically and racially, if you will, blacks and browns are considered of the inferior race. But even white women have the choice of looking beneath them, quote unquote, beneath them, and choosing the best that comes out of the people of color, which, and the question is, what does that leave Black women? It leaves them holding the shorter end of the stick. So this is something that I see that's, it's kind of comparable to what you see in the United States, where a lot of men do still prefer lighter skinned women. And I'm not saying, Black American men don't like darker skinned women. It's just, in my own social circles, I know that even though a lot of Black men, we see brown and Black women as beautiful also, but you still see this tendency to marry women of color with lighter skin. So again, this comparison sticks out because it says that darker skinned Black women are often left out of the marriage market. Or at least that's what research by sociologist Edward Tellis suggests on the dynamics of interracial marriages in Brazil. The number of brancas, white women, marrying pardos, brown mixed men, is much higher than the number of brancos marrying pardas, and so on. This is a picture of popular singer-musician Ed Malta and his wife, Edna Lopes. I've always liked Ed Malta's music. He's one of Brazil's best, popular musicians. He started off doing Black dance music. He did a little R&B, a little bit of funk. He has little elements of rap in his music. He started going into more of a modern Brazilian popular music sound. He's crossed cross lines over into the jazz world. He plays a little bit of jazz fusion, if you will, Brazilian jazz, all around talented musician. And he's made a lot of music and actually where he sings in English. So again, as a musician, love his music, but he follows the trend, successful black man, white woman. It's not like in the United States where people say that, but you actually see the stats that say no, most well-to-do black men still marry black women. In Brazil, it's the exact opposite. A well-to-do black man, is going to be hard to find him married to a black woman, particularly if she's dark-skinned. More data extracted from the book Racismo à Brasileira, Uma Nova Perspectiva Sociológica. White women spend on average 65% of their lives married compared to 50% of black women, or rather 50% in the lives of black women. 51% of black men are married to people of other races, white women and brown women, against only 4%, 40% of black women. Now, maybe I should say color in this case, because you can't actually say that there's a parda race. These are just people who fit somewhere between black and white. In actuality, you find a lot of pardas, mixed or brown colored people. The Pardu group spans the spectrum from brown skin to some people who could be classified as white, actually consider themselves Parda because they have a certain identity. So Parda, it just depends on how you see it. A lot of people say it should be a completely different category. And a lot of people see Pardus as just being not dark-skinned black people, but should be considered part of the black race. It just depends on how you see it. In Brazil, because of the perverse sexual and racial hierarchy, who ends up remaining in the marital musical chairs are black women. Of course, we are not saying that all people want to get married or that marriage is the measure of success of a human being, but only that Teles's data indicates, once again, that of all the players in the marriage market in Brazil, black women are having fewer options, are marrying less, and are spending less time married. Now, I have often looked at the argument that Black Brazilian women have posed the question, why are so many black men marrying white women? And what I find is that particularly in entertainment circles, you find a lot of black women married to white men also. In this case, take a look at actress Juliana Alves. At the time, her boyfriend was Guilherme Duarte. I look at this guy and I don't necessarily see a white guy, but in Brazil, he could be considered white. In the United States, people would look at him as probably a Latino. But you'll notice that most people probably wouldn't consider this guy black, but you find this often amongst black women also. Like the question was, and there's another article on the blog that asked, well, why are you pointing the finger at us when you do the same thing? And that's something that I see a lot. You find a lot more black women in Brazil married to white men than you'll find in the United States.